You're listening to the Cambridge Insider Podcast. On this episode, hosts Stephen and Mariah go over the importance of a well-prepared student interview for international students from a school and a student. This episode is sponsored by the Gunston School. The Gunston School is an independent, co-educational college prep high school located in Maryland, just about an hour from Washington, D.C. It was founded in 1911 and draws students from around the world. There is also a large international student population that resides near the school with host families from the robust community. Thanks for listening.
Cambridge Insider Podcast time. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Cambridge Insider Podcast. In the US, we are steamrolling towards the spring, which is always nice, at least in the Northeast. We've had a little bit of snowfall, but we are certainly starting to see a little longer days, a little bit more sunshine. So this is all good news. This is all good news, unless, like my friend Mariah, you are a big fan of the snow. Mariah, how are things in the lovely state of Texas this morning?
It's good. We don't have snow. We've been hitting a little bit of like storms this week, but I'm hoping that just means spring is coming. We still hit 85 almost every day, but we've had a lot of thunderstorms. So 85 just feels like a mop.
There we go. Middle of America, thunderstorms. It's exciting. It's exciting. It is an exciting time at Cambridge Network as well, because we are starting to see the churning of more and more student interest, more and more student applications, student enrollment, student re-enrollments, and we're seeing a lot of our school partners engage in student interviews, which forms such an essential part of accepting any student, right? And I think we're going to talk a little bit about student interviews today. Mariah, I know that you have played a big part in a lot of the content that we're going to be discussing, but talk to us a little bit about this article that we'll be posting up on our show notes.
Yeah, so this is an article that we have released as a company, and I believe it was last year or the year before, but we haven't changed it because it's still is very relevant and the information is updated to a T. And this time last year, and then as well right now, just looking at like the traffic. If you're in marketing, you understand what I'm saying. If you're not in marketing, you're like, what are you talking about? Basically, you just get updated when people click on different things of your sites. And so this is a site on our site. So we see that there's a high increase of traffic going to this. And it's our sample questions for international exchange student interviews. And this year, it's always an increase because it not only helps schools, but it helps students too. So, Stephen, I think the first question we should talk about is what is about this season and this time and the beginning of March, end of February, what is about this season that increases this peak? Obviously, you just said that there was more enrollments, but like why suddenly now? Like what makes this peak season?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question, right? More and more students right now are in the process of sending out applications to schools and starting to decide and think about where they want to go to school, where they want to apply. This is also a time. So let me start there and say that the cycle of enrollment has typically shifted over the past couple of years. And we've seen the enrollment cycle at what we call the peak season of enrollment, the peak season of interest from international students. We've seen that push later and later. That's simply because of a saturated market. Students have more options and they're under less pressure to have to decide immediately and apply to as many schools as they can as soon as possible because they are maybe concerned that they will not get an acceptance. Now there's so many school options out there, and we talk about the saturated market often, that students are a little bit more measured in their approach. So we'll see that peak enrollment season push a little bit later than what maybe schools and partners have been used to in the past. And we've really seen that pattern emerge over the past 2 or 3 years, really since maybe just before COVID hit. Schools are also in a place now where they are starting to really focus on the international recruitment. For many schools, they've sort of the past month or so has really been heavy into domestic admissions, and all of their focus has been there. We'll see in the next month or so that schools start moving away from domestic, enrollment as that starts to calm down and as they put those things to bed and really focus on what we can do on the international side. One final thing is many of the top, and I say top and elite boarding schools is because there are many other elite programs in the country, but many of those boarding programs often make decisions at this time. So students who may have applied to those boarding programs that are very, very selective, now once maybe they don't get selected, they look at some other school options. I say that with an asterisk because I believe that we have so many incredible programs that, I'm sort of using air quotes to say top academic programs or top elite boarding programs. There's so many great programs that we offer. So that's part of the reason why this time of the year we'll see an increase in student interviews and increase in student apps, and we'll see that start of the peak enrollment season for international students.
Yeah. I think that the peak season or like all the happening, it can probably be a little overwhelming. So I think that is so important that us as a company puts out things to ease not only our students, but ease our schools too. And these are students that we interact with pretty often and we're familiar with their culture. So we just wanted to provide a resource for students and schools to know what they're getting themselves into, but then also to aid like what is going to be the best thing, not only for your student, but like the best way for you to understand your student and then how you can help your student when they're further than are accepted to your program. And I really like the setup we have. So the article is broken down into 3 sections. The first section, and this is like pretty much the order we suggest that you should conduct your interviews. And the first one is to getting to know the students. So just asking simple questions. What is your given name? Do you have an English name? How did you get that English name? It allows the student to really like understand, engage who they are. But then you're interested in them. And I really like this one question. It says, tell me about your hometown. If I came to visit you, where in your hometown would you take me? I think it's really important for the students to like understand that you find importance in their country too. Like obviously they're really wanting to come to the States to have education, but like it's nice to know that there's an environment that actually cares about their hometown too. So I think that is a really good question. Stephen, I'm sure you've been in and on a lot of interviews. Is there anything that you've seen a school do really well to get to know a student, or maybe you saw something not good happen? You're like, they really needed to take more time with a student. Do you have any examples that popped to your head about any of that?
Yeah, I firstly, before I answer the question directly, I love what you said there, right? So getting to know a student is important on so many different levels. It's great for you as a school to understand, the type of person that you're dealing with. What are some of their interests? But importantly for a student as well, I think some of our school partners sometimes forget, but students are nervous. They're going into interviews. There's a little bit of anxiety running around. You asking them questions that are a little bit more personal really deals with topics that are easier for them to talk about. If I tell you about my hometown, there's a sort of common, good-natured feeling there, and that puts me at ease immediately. So I think asking about your hometown is a great example of the type of question that can give you a little insight into where the student is from, get to know them a little bit better, which is great for you, but also really just calm the student down. Because at the end of the day, as a school, you really do want a true representation of a student. Outside of maybe the nerves and anxieties and stresses that they feel, you want to get to know a kid. You want to see that true potential. And sometimes I think students are so nervous that schools walk away going, that maybe wasn't a great student, but maybe we just didn't spend enough time really getting to know them. Language is something we can develop. A student's nervousness and anxieties and how they answer a question is something we can work on. But really, we got to look out for those students that we feel their personalities will be a great addition to our community. And I think those questions are great. I think many of the students that I interact with, coming out of Southeast Asia, food is such a central part of their culture that, I find one question that really calms them down is just to, tell me about your favorite dish, that you love to eat at home. And many of them will give these exciting examples of, their favorite dish and who eats it and who in the family cooks it. So that's just another example of typically, something that'll set the student at ease and a great way to get to know them.
Yeah, who doesn't want to talk about food? That's definitely it's a go-to icebreaker for us. So I'm assuming students will too. Love that. The second section, which this kind of like follows through too, like when you're talking about hometown and cooking and such, it's cultural understanding. So there's a couple example questions. Says, what is one difference between education in China and education in America? What is one part of American culture that you are excited to experience? What is one part of Chinese culture that you would like to share with Americans? Yet again, I think it gives the school an idea of like the student understands what is happening, but it also gets them excited about that. Stephen, I don't know if you remember this, the word cultural responsiveness. At our last Connecting Communities event, the speaker talked about cultural responsiveness, which is basically taking things of students' cultures and infusing them in the curriculum in school. So it allows the experience to be better, for them to remember things more often, like facts about different things, or comparing it to the numbers to something that they would remember in their country. And I think like that, having this part of the interview is like combines cultural responsiveness to them, because yet again, it gives them something that they're comfortable to talk about, but it also kind of shows what level of understanding, what maturity they are. How do you feel about that as well?
Yeah, exactly. I think you said it really, really well there. I think that type of question and that line of questioning is so important as well, because you want to set cultural expectations. You want students to come to America understanding that there will be cultural differences, and that's okay, and that we as a school can support you through those, but that things might not run exactly the same. There might be a different set of norms and values that we adhere to because we are doing high school in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
The flip side of that, we also want schools to be aware of the fact that for many, many years, students have been exposed to a completely different culture, and their norms and values have been, culturally very, very different to what a school would be proposing or what a school exercises and practices. So I think that type of conversation, both for the school and the student, makes cultural differences a talking point. It normalizes it a little bit, and it sets those expectations that we're not always going to have the same understanding of things, and that's okay. That's the beauty of international students. That's the beauty of travel, is it opens your mind up to different ways of doing things. But I think that allows students and schools to set those expectations and to be able to move forward with that relationship in a way that's productive for the community.
Yeah. If you're listening and you like that word, cultural responsiveness, I'll put a link to the speaker explaining that and giving some tips for you to incorporate cultural responsiveness in the classroom, home, and in the community. She did a really good job at explaining it. And she's a teacher as well, so she knows the ins and outs on it. So we'll put that in the show notes as well.
Big shout out to Mariah for doing those Connecting Communities events. They've been so super successful. I had a school reach out to me randomly the other day and just be like, the reason I'm connecting with you about what you guys do at Cambridge was because I went to one of these events. So quick shout out to our team.
Yes, I enjoy it. Thank you. And then coming to this last section of it is goals and aspirations. And we put in a list of ton of questions for students to kind of prepare. But I was like reading this and I'm thinking about like the age of the students that mostly are interviewing at the time. They're typically ninth grade? Yeah. And I'm thinking about like when I was in ninth grade and I'm like, I don't even know if I can answer these. So what types of questions, or like what are things schools looking for? Like, you talk to the schools, what types of students are they looking for? Do they want someone that like knows the ins and outs of everything, or they just want someone that has at least an imagination of it? I don't know. What are your thoughts? What have you seen schools look for?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think overwhelmingly my experience has been that schools really just want students who are open to a new experience. They're open and willing to experience a school and find their direction. I think it's rare that you find a school that wants a student to know what they want to do and where they want to be with their life. I don't think that's a fair type of expectation, and I certainly don't think our school partners want that. I think if schools come across a student that says, you know what, I'm just excited to understand America, and I'm excited because I have an interest in ABC, and I read that your program has some of those things that I'm interested in. I get so many students that say, I want to be, as an example, I want to be a doctor one day. And I've just read about some of the great programs that you run that are in line with wanting to be a doctor. I think schools are so excited by that. They're excited by students who are passionate about what they do and what they're interested in. More so than, these are the 20 goals that I have for while I'm in the US. And you do, of course, get students that are very goal directed, and that's also okay. But I don't think that is the expectation. So, I think an interview, and I will say this as an over sort of arching idea of the interview. I think the interview has changed tremendously for schools, and for students as well. I think schools now really need to, more so than 5-6 years ago, need to use the interview to explain to a student why they feel that, the school is a great fit for the student. It used to be a student coming in and trying to explain why I would be a great fit for the school. I think it's a little bit of both now. I think it's a student explaining to a school, but also a school explaining to a student why we'd love to have you on the campus, what we can offer you, what makes our program so unique, and the student doing the same from their perspective as well. And hopefully in that discussion, you get this meeting of the minds, for lack of a better word, where both students and schools understand that this would be a great fit and we can be really successful together.
Yeah, that's good. Because you've said so many times that the market is growing and there's more schools that are getting to it. So you kind of have to put your best on too for the interview as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, both schools and students, you're one of many. That's just the reality of the market.
Yeah.
And that's really the reality of the domestic market as well for schools and for students, So just think about what makes you unique and be able to talk about that and how you fit into that. I think for both schools and students will be a good strategy.
Yeah. I was going to close with asking you what some advice for some schools, but I think that you just said it, just to figure out who you are, be unique, and bring that to the interview so the kid is excited that they're talking to you and want to go to that school.
100%. I will give two final sort of pet hates of mine that I think would be very advantageous for our schools and our students to know. From a school's perspective, or at least from a student's perspective, be careful not to be too prepared. I don't think schools want you to read off, or I know for a fact schools don't want you to read off what you think they want to know. They just want to get to know you. That's it. They want to get to know who you are. They want to understand who truly the person is that's speaking to them. And from a school's perspective, think about, do a little bit of research. Think about how you can explain to the student why they'd be a great fit. And that comes through reading through an application, taking 5 minutes, 10 minutes before an interview, not rushing into an interview and going, oh, who is this? Understanding that a certain student has a little background and you can understand something from that. And that'll often help you, guide you through your interview. If a student is super interested in robotics, make sure maybe you can have somebody from the robotics team quickly pop in during the interview and just say, hi, this is what we do in the robotics team, or somebody from the soccer team, or whatever it might be. But that comes through a little bit of preparation from the school side. So just two things for students and schools to be aware of.
That's good. Well, that is it on the article.
Awesome.
It's a quick,
Mariah,
easy read.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, as per usual in our podcast, you were the one to come up with the notion of this is really a good time to deal with this. I think it is. I think it's a great value add to students and to school partners who are listening. So, make sure you make the most of these opportunities to get to meet new people and hopefully we make some great connections and place some great students in great schools. That's what we're looking for. Mariah, any final thoughts from your side? You've asked a lot of questions, but you've added so much value. Any final thing you want to say?
Just happy interview season. That's it.
That's it. Happy interview season. Feel free to reach out to us. We're going to post a ton of stuff on the show notes as well, specifically the article. So feel free to read through it at both schools and students. And to all of our listeners, remember to like, listen, subscribe, do all of those good things that allow us to, give content that is worthwhile and makes you happy when you read it. And we'll catch you around the next episode of the Cambridge Insider Podcast. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Cambridge Insider Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to never miss an episode. For more Cambridge updates, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Have a great week and stay connected.